Hi, everyone. I'm back with you with the another episode of Strange Encounters Down Under. We took a break over the Christmas, January, going on for quite a while now, break. But unfortunately, last year I did the podcast with Ben Hurl, and unfortunately, due to time constraints, Ben had to, something had to give. So Ben had to leave, and we wish him well, all the best in his future endeavours. So, but I've now asked Damien Nott to join me as a co-host on the Strange Encounters Down Under show. So welcome, Damien. Welcome to the first episode with you as a co-host.
I'm so excited, Sheryl. Thank you so much. You guys are legends for having me on, and I really appreciate being here, and I hope I can bring something to your program.
You're very welcome, and we hope we get some sense out of you because you haven't slept for 2 nights. So
it's better than not sleeping for 4 nights. So yeah, it's all good. 2 nights I can get away with
it. True.
All good.
So Damien and I are going to talk to you in this episode about the dark side of ufology. And the dark side of UFO research is I think, Damien, is ufology's dirty little secret, don't you?
I am a filthy little secret, absolutely. And one that must not be spoken on one's lips, but when it leaks out, hey, what can I say? I am the dirty little secret. But
no, you are not the dirty little secret, but there is a dark side to UFO research.
Absolutely, there is. And it's not all love and ponies and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's a little bit on the side that a lot of people don't want to encroach or touch upon.
Exactly.
And I believe that's what we're here to do today.
We are. So in this episode, we're discussing not only the behind the scenes human hoodwinks, but the fact that not all UFO researchers agree that we are dealing solely with physical craft from outer space occupied by off-world astronauts. Somewhere in the mix, there's something or someone that exists under the umbrella of sometimes spiritual, maybe occult, Fortean, paranormal, and it's been invading our homes and encroaching on our personal boundaries for a very long time. And as Damien said, it's not all sweetness and light, as many would want us to believe. So the truth is that there are indeed negative elements relating to UFO encounters, and they have always been intertwined in the phenomenon, and they are not going away. So stay with us as we lift up the rug of ufology and poke around in the darkness to see what jumps out. So, Damien, there seems to be some cosmic criminals, I guess you could call them, that have made their way into our midst. And what do you think? Do you think what are your thoughts on the dark side of ufology?
Okay, judging from personal experience myself, I'd like to go back to when I was 12 years old and I witnessed a red ball of light being chased around the sky with my stepbrothers, and by a different, two different balls of light, and it was incredible. And it made me think at that time that why are they chasing this red ball of light around the sky? What is with this? It was like a game of tag, but very forceful kind of thing. And it made me kind of think that, hey, there's more to this than meets the eye. And really there is. These so-called aerial events have been reported going way back into history. Jacques Valet released a book with Chris Orbeck a couple of years ago, Wonders in the Sky, talking about aerial events happening going way back through, time immemorial. These things have been reported. Now, back in the day, we didn't have mobile phones, we didn't have cameras, thousands of years ago. So all they could do was report on what they had at the time and what they were given and what they saw themselves. And so it was obviously in paper, and we don't use paper nowadays. So it's a bit of an old technology, as you know, but that's all we have. And these reports of these aerial battles go back way back into history. I'm talking about 1566 Brazil, Basel, Switzerland. 6 years later as well, Nuremberg, Germany. These things have been happening for a long time, these so-called aerial battles that have been reported. And I've seen them, witnessed them myself, and actually captured them on camera as well. So just recently. So I'm very lucky to have that, because it was the same red orb, the same yellowy green orb, and the same blue orb that I saw when I was a child with my brothers. So it was chasing the same red orb around the sky. And the reports going back through history, there was a report in Germany, I think it was in the 15th century, and a gentleman was walking into town and he had a red ball of light following him above his head. And this ball of light was mimicking his movements. And when I say it would stop when he would stop, and he walked over a bridge, and the people in the town, they reported this. It was a big story at the time. And people back then were very spiritual, as you know. That was a little bit different. There were some religious people, there were spiritual people. Spiritualism was huge back in Europe, back in the days. And so people didn't know what to take of this. So they saw this red light following this gentleman into town over this bridge, and they didn't really know what to make of it. But because to err on the side of caution, I guess, they locked their doors. They said, no, we're not letting this guy in. This is the portent of a bad omen. That's the way they saw it, this red light. And if you experience this yourself, you kind of would think that, hey, this is a bad omen, because red is the color of danger and the color of the devil and everything like that. So, these kind of things come into mind when you see something like this, and it's very unusual. But, nobody would let this gentleman into the pub to even have a drink after what he just experienced, the poor guy, and you just think, okay, well, this is continuing on to today. So there does seem to be, while there's a light, a love and light, as you say, like a side of the phenomenon where people like to believe that they're all good and they want to help us and they're here to give us free energy and all that kind of stuff. It still hasn't happened to this day. They've been talking about it since the 60s, since the early days of the contactees. This free energy is still yet to come. We're still waiting to see it. There's a very dark side and element to this UFO phenomenon that is not love and light. And I think, as you know, these cases are small and they're not spoken about very often. But the reality, because it flies in the face of what people would like to believe. And I think people would like to believe that they're good and they're here to help us and they're, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah. So there's some, I think that there are some cases where that people have reported that, let's call them aliens for now, because we don't really know what they are. The alien beings have actually helped people, but there are some that haven't. And, what bothers me is that, some of these extraterrestrials, aliens, seem to have the ability to manipulate the minds of humans. And I've often received reports for them to saying things like, I've been sitting on the couch watching telly or just inside reading or something. And I just feel prompted to go outside. And when I do, I see lights in the sky. So regardless of what the outcome of that is, it bothers me that human minds are able to be manipulated. I think that's really a problem. And the other thing is, I've received other reports describing that whatever people are interacting with, that these beings can seemingly make their fears miraculously disappear and replace them with instantaneous waves of love. And again, that's a real concern for me, because it's indicative of some form of manipulation of our own natural responses and our behaviors. And so we have to wonder, what else are they manipulating? What do you think?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head right there. It's a scary thing enough to believe that something is coming. Just give it a planetary definition. They're coming from another planet. They're coming here, abducting us, taking us, doing what they want with us, and then dropping us back off in our beds. That is scary enough. If that happened here on Earth, that would be kidnapping. There'd be charges brought. That is not a nice thing. It's not a pleasant thing. And if you look at some of the experiences that abductees report, some of them very negative and very scary. Yeah. Some of the things that happen to them aboard these craft, and these beings seem very, not hostile per se, but very uncaring, very unbiased, very just like we would look at a pile, like an ant's nest. And you wouldn't go step on the ant's nest unless you're a child having fun or whatever. But They seem to, the fact that they can take people at will, do whatever they want, and drop you back off in your bed without, with some masked memory, with something that they can actually implant in your mind, which may make you think it's a dream, or that they're pleasant, or they're doing it to help us, or whatever the case is. But the reality is, we don't know why they're doing this, and it's a scary fact that they are doing it, and you have to ask the reason why. Why would they be doing this in the first place? Is it because they don't want us to find out? Obviously, they don't want us to know what they're up to. But with the masked memory and the memory uh, that's given to people when they wake up from these dreams, and it's so real, everything is so realistic, and it's they were there, they were definitely there. And some of these events are quite scary, and even the events that there's some sort of memory where it's all pleasant and everything, even that, if you look at, like what I was saying, on Earth, if you were to take someone against their will, it would be kidnapping. It'd be, you'd be charged for this. So, there is a deeper, nastier something going on, where it may be nefarious. We're using human terms for something we really don't understand. We don't know their objective. We don't know what they are. We don't know if they're good or bad. That's human terms, But if good and bad permeate throughout the world, who's to say it doesn't permeate throughout the universe?
Well, during the 90s, you've just reminded me that because I was heavily involved in the 90s, receiving a lot of abduction experiences, reports from people having those experiences. And there was a real split in the UFO community that this is all good for humanity, this is bad for humanity, so much so that actually in 92, they held an abduction study conference, or a lot of researchers came together and they held a conference. And I mean, I've got the proceedings. It's like this thick. It's over 700 pages with 150 presentations.
Wow.
And it was a watershed moment in UFO research, actually, with the result that, it split the two major schools of opinion about what was going on. And, I've received experiences from people who've had extremely frightening experiences. And like you say, there seems to be no understanding or acknowledgement from these beings that what they're doing to the humans is painful and traumatizing. And absolutely, during the 90s, the argument was, oh, well, it's just like, the pro positive human agenda. It's just like going to the dentist, or it's just like tagging animals, that sort of thing. It's painful, but it's for the betterment. But actually, when I go to the dentist, I make the choice to go there, and they're interacting with me and they're telling me what's going on.
Yeah, well, the dentist doesn't come into your room the night before and say, hey, you've got an operation on your gum tomorrow, I'm going to take you right now against your will. No, it doesn't happen that way. So
there was a lot of rationalization debate that was going on, I think, and I think it's probably one of the reasons, another reason why that authorities or people in the know don't want humanity to ask too many questions and to divert our attention away from it, because the bottom line is, and we've spoken about this before, is they have no control of what's going on in the skies when it comes to these advanced beings, if that's what they are, right? And how do you tell a public that, sorry, we can't do anything about it,
Yeah, absolutely. That goes back to does the government know what the phenomenon is, or do they not know? So that's two reasons why I believe that they'd be keeping it from us. One, they know what it is and they believe that it's hostile, or that it could be nefarious in some way, shape, or form, or they have no idea what it is and they don't want to excite the public.
Yeah.
So every now and then they do a Project Blue Book or whatever to calm the public's interest, and then put it at bay for a little while longer until the next lot of sightings happen. And then Senate and everything are harassed with, you must investigate this and everything. We're in some strange times right now, as you know, Sheryl, with all the balloons that are being shot down around the world, and they're claiming they're UFOs and whatnot. In a strict sense of the word, they're not wrong. They are unidentified flying objects. They didn't know what they were, but I mean, I'm sure if they got an 22 Raptor close to one of these things, I'm sure they could work out they're a balloon or not. So we're getting conflicting reports from the military, from so-called pilots, saying that these things interfered with the electronics in their jets, that they were moving on their own accord, that they were changing direction. Other pilots said, no, that didn't happen. But no actual pilot has been interviewed as such. So we don't know where these sources are coming from. So you can't really trust it, unfortunately, at the end of the day. So
yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. You can't, the trust. But, going back to the abduction experiences, and I'm just going to touch on some X-rated stuff here, but some of the reports that I received involve sexual encounters with some of these alien beings, where women were reporting that they'd been raped by aliens or been made to have sex with other humans on board craft or wherever they were. And some of the males were telling me that, and there were fewer of these, because I think it's embarrassing for a male to talk about, more embarrassing than a woman perhaps, that they'd either been placed in orgy situations or been made to think that they're partaking in sexual orgies anyway. So, that's a very, I want to say dark, but taboo side of what's been going on. And I received quite a few of those reports. And whether women were actually having sex or being raped by these alien creatures, and some of them said that was happening to them with reptilian creatures, or whether this was a scenario that was being put into their mind, it's not clear to me. We really don't know, because again, going back to them being master mental manipulators of the human mind. And there's other things like the watchers, they were called the watchers at some of these beings. They're standing over people while sleeping, and people could feel their breath or their soul being sucked out of them. And that sort of crosses over to the nightmare hag experiences,
The incubus and the succubus, going back to Persian times. Yeah, I mean, scientists say now it's sleep paralysis, right? But still, they have no mechanism to explain the reports. They're saying that it's basically a waking nightmare. That's science's explanation for this incubus, succubus, sleep paralysis theory. But it does not explain the hallucinations that are started, and hallucinations that seem so similar all around the world, going back thousands of years. The same sort of thing, sitting on your chest, being in the room, some sort of feeling, you're being pushed into the bed. I've had it myself twice. So it was the most scariest experience I've had in my life. I've seen some stuff that would send people to mental hospitals, but this really scared me. I had a person in the bed next to me at the time, and I could not touch her. I could not reach out for her, and this was happening, and I was seeing something on the wall, a big black thing swirling around, and the room went this reddish, like a moon red color. It was really bizarre, and it was real. It was so real. It was like a waking dream. It's similar to what we have reported to us in regards to abduction stories. These very, very similar. So who's to say that it is not somehow connected in one way or another with what we're talking about with the jinn, and other things like this going back way throughout history. So that there seems to be some sort of connection. I don't believe that this can be explained by science. This is out of the realm of science. This is I call it paranatural, as you know.
Yeah.
But I believe it's natural. It's just one of the things that we just don't understand yet about our existence and about who we are and what we are. But I do believe that it is part of human history. It's part of what we are and part of who we are and part of our greater environment, our greater universe around us. We are just puppies on the end of this long string, and we have this much of the string in our lives, and the string keeps on going and keeps on going, and we're still thousands of years later unaware, but we still know enough to report these things and speak about them, and they're still happening. These experiences, they're happening all the time to people. And the fact is, with the sleep paralysis thing, a lot of people claim to have a being above them, watching them, pushing down on them, something in the room, a presence. This is very, very scary. It's a scary thing, not being able to speak while these things are around, and and the similarities all around the world. Nobody experiences the same nightmare. but for some reason, this nightmare keeps on replaying and replaying all throughout human history. And there's got to be something to that. I don't believe it can be easily just explained by science as a waking dream.
Yeah, exactly. And I just wanted to pick up on the jinn that you mentioned before. Is, I guess you say, Islamic belief or understanding of the jinn, who are like shadow people, who have the ability to be in our physical reality as well as in non-physical. And there's concentrated hot zones of them with ongoing UFO reports, ghost sightings, Bigfoot sightings, hauntings, mystery lights, strange creatures, shadow people, hooded beings, all these sorts of things. And the jinn can present themselves like these as shadow people, and who from people I've spoken to, shadow people seem to like dark places, and maybe that's why they can show up in people's bedrooms in the dark of night, where they appear in corners of the room or up and down hallways. And in few cases, they've passed through people, and those people can experience a host of physical problems as a result of that too. So there are all these strange things that are going on, which actually can leave people psychologically damaged. And whatever they are, these entities, some of them can form attachments to the witnesses, and and they experience these ongoing paranormal events in their daily life.
Absolutely. It seems like some sort of energy, doesn't it? Like if it can extract negative emotions out of people, make people more depressed, that kind of thing. I've heard the same reports about these jinn that attach themselves to humans all throughout history. It seems the same thing with these shadow people and these beings that are seen during these experiences of sleep paralysis, and it does play a part in a way in the history or the thought of the entire UFO phenomenon, the abduction side of it especially. It does seem to play a part in it. Whether it has something to do with it or not, we don't know. It's just a lot of similarities. And so, as you know, with the abduction process, a lot of people who claim to be abducted, they've woken up in their bed straight after this experience as though it was a dream, but it was a dream that was so real. And I've had this experience myself, and I still can't put it down if it was real or not, but it was real to me at the time. So I can understand why people would have a dream like this of being on a craft or being, somewhere else and having beings around you and all this kind of stuff. And then, and not understanding it, but it being so real. You can smell smells, you can feel cold and warmth, and you can think in your mind in this dream. You're fully aware, and so there is a lot of strangeness, high strangeness, as you know, associated with all of this topic, which may link it all together or it may not. But it's interesting just to bring it up so people can think for themselves, like, okay, it may be a part of it, may not be. But until you really experience it, just like with the UFO phenomenon, you really don't know. You don't really understand. It's reading a book is one thing. Excuse me. Reading a book is one thing, but experiencing it yourself, as you know, is a completely different thing, and it can leave you on another page altogether of the book, where your own conclusions be laid. And at the end of the day, we only go by our own experiences, what we experience ourselves, and also what we research and what we're told about this whole phenomenon.
Yeah.
And the strangeness is so strange all the way through. So it's not as easy and simple as the good guys. They're here to help us. As you know, there's some other negative faction here. There's a trickster element involved here.
In some cases, I remember when Bud Hopkins came out here too, but he presented some cases, quite a few actually, because he, as you know, he was very heavily involved in abduction research and collecting a lot of reports. But this has been reported to me too, that people have had those alien abduction experiences, and they have, they've had left with scars, scratches, scoop marks, and also been black and blue all over, like all over the torso. So, I remember some of the images. I went down to Sydney to see Bud when he was out here, and he was up here too. And he was showing images of people with big grazes down their back, like they'd been dragged along or something had happened to them. But
Wow.
I also, we know, and we were going to talk about this, about people had been seriously hurt, and a good case of that was over in Colares in Brazil, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was one of the most impressive, scariest cases, I think, in UFO history, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When you look at it, for the extent and the duration that it lasts, I know there's been other small cases throughout history where individuals or whatever have been attacked or whatever by these beings, being abducted, and like you said, left black and blue, and scars all over them and all that sort of stuff, and a repeated thing too, not just once but repeated throughout their lives.
Yeah.
But with Colares, that's an interesting story. As you know, it's just crazy. The more you look into it, the more you find out about that case, and I thought I knew everything about it years ago, but it's really, really insane, and not many people know about this. It's just like with the media, how they sort of blacklist a whole lot of politicians, and you don't want to hear about this stuff, you want to hear this stuff. So it's kind of like the same with the UFO phenomenon. Everyone wants to hear the love and light, and they're here to help us and all this kind of stuff, but in the reality, at the end of the day, there is another side to this. And in Colares, an island off Brazil, as you know, it was incredible over a period of what, 3 months, 3.5 months.
I
The
think it was in the 70s too, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It was an early case. There was basically UFOs were coming out of the water, they were coming from the sky, and they were coming out of the jungle and attacking humans. They were sending beams of light down and hitting people, running through the streets and scattering this way and that like rats. And they're hitting people and leaving radiation burns on these people, making them very unwell. And two people passed away within days of getting hit. People were sitting inside their homes and just relaxing, maybe watching television or something. The next second, a beam of light comes through the ceiling, which is another high strangeness too. So
Yes.
the beam of light's not getting evaporated or anything, it's going directly through without burning the ceiling and hitting people and burning people, leaving radiation burns on them. And individuals had to actually be sent from the island to the mainland of Brazil to a main hospital, and they were dying and they were sick. And apparently, I found out that people were dying afterwards as well. It wasn't the first 2 or 3 people that died within a few days. People were dying up to several months, a year later, of what the injuries they sustained. They were getting bone problems. They were having hypophosphatemic osteomalacia problems. Very strange things that shouldn't really affect people unless they're very old and they're very have brittle bones and all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, these people have it, and these radiation burns. They had radiation sickness. People throwing up. They were sick as dogs. And the doctor in the town at the time, she didn't at first. She thought it was a mass hallucination. She thought
Yeah.
everybody was hallucinating this, but it turned out no. She actually saw it herself one night, which is enough to seal the deal, as you know. And so she was like, "Wow, okay, there's something to this." And so the Brazilian Air Force actually came into this island and they set up camp, and they said it's nothing about UFOs. They said, but we'll call it Operation Prato, Prato, which in South America means plate, saucer,
Mm.
Operation Saucer, like flying
Yeah.
saucer. So for something that had nothing to do with UFOs or flying saucers, it was called Operation Flying Saucer, basically. So over a period of a few months, as you know, they were on the beach. They had a lot of equipment. They had Q-star telescopes. They had a whole bunch of different things. They had a lot of cameras, and back in the day, we didn't have the technology we have today. But I mean, they had EMF meters. They had a whole bunch of different things. They even had good old fashioned pen and paper. Were drawing what they were seeing, and these things were coming out of the jungle. They, over a period of a couple of months, they literally drew, filmed, photographed dozens and dozens of these UFOs of all different shapes, sizes. They were seeing beings in these craft as well. And as you know, a little alternate thing at the end of this. One of the captains involved in it actually had a being in his bed. He was found suicided.
Yeah.
You know, very unusual. And Captain Hollander, and he was found suicide. It was very unusual. And the thing is that, a lot of friends said that, okay, well, some friends said that he was, so, he'd spoken about suicide. He had some mental, depression. He was a bit depressed, right? As most of us are in this life, at some point or another, you get a bit depressed, right? It's just life. But after seeing what he saw on that beach, on that island of Claris, and for months and months and months witnessing these things, he had a being cuddle up behind him in bed one night. And I mean, this is incredible, right? And whispering in Spanish, not English or anything like that, talking in his own language into his ear, behind him, everything's going to be all right. Don't freak out. It's the same thing. These things always tell people, don't be scared. Don't worry. Everything's going to be all right. We're here for a good reason. Whatever that reason is, no one knows yet. We still haven't received this free energy yet. So whatever reason they're here for, no, it's a role of observance. They're watching us like a scientist would watch bacteria grow in a petri dish. You don't jump in with the bacteria. You watch it from afar. And these things, they are watching us. And if they have a hand in our evolution, who knows? But at the same time, this being, spoke to him, and it was just amazing. It blew his mind. And I think he spoke with AJ Gervard afterwards.
Yep.
And and I believe that he managed to get a lot of the reports from the military. But he couldn't get them all. He couldn't get all the photos or videos that were taken on the beach by the Brazilian Air Force at the time. And but what he did get was incredible. It was amazing. And here's a point where it's not talked about. It's shoved aside in ufology so that new age stuff can come through. So love and light, they're here to help us. We're all star childs. We're all here, to forward the earth and advance civilization and everything. But people do not take into account certain cases like Colaris and others. Brazil is a crazy area, as you know,
Yeah.
for weird UFO stuff, So it's just, it's a hotbed of activity there, but
Absolutely.
they have everything going on over there. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
And I think, there's clearly some sort of non-physical aspect to many cases, but there's also physical aspects as well. And there's an element of deception with encounters and sightings. And
Absolutely.
I think these 2 points should really not be overlooked when looking for answers. We can't ignore, nor should we, that there are less scientific and intellectually acceptable aspects of the phenomenon, and that we probably can't use logic when trying to explain something that seems to often act illogically.
Absolutely.
It's just very strange. And I remember Jacques Valet said in his book, Passport to Magonia, that UFOs are real, but they're not, he says they're not physical. They're messengers of deception, and that the UFO beings of today belong to the same class of manifestation as the occult entities that were described in centuries past. Now, I would dispute his claim that they're not physical, because I think in some cases they are. They are actually in physical craft. They've left marks on the ground and imprints,
Absolutely.
yeah, in the environment. Burns to trees and things like that, radiation that can be picked up with Geiger counters and all those types of things. But there are these, some of those intentions are nefarious, and we just can't get away from that. We just have to be grown up about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, we really, it's a scary phenomenon that we know very, very little about. And personally, I believe that the government knows even probably less than what we know.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, who really knows at the end of the day? But like I said, they either know and it's nefarious and they don't want to scare us, or they don't know and they just want us to keep on going and being good little slaves and pay our taxes and stuff like that and don't question anything what's going on. But it does get to a point, as every few years that there's so many sightings, and we're at the age of the internet and mobile phones, and technology's just beyond, comprehension now, compared to what we had even 10 years ago. It's amazing. So they can't continue to hide this fact when apparently every 6 or 7 minutes around the world, there's a UFO spotted. I don't know if that's still legit today, but it was several years ago. But as far as what I've seen and what I've heard, I mean, UFOs are still coming. They haven't stopped, and they're still coming in numbers. And from what I've experienced myself in the last couple of weeks, it's been absolutely insane. And I hadn't seen anything for like several months before that, anything decent. And then all of a sudden, kablammy, I'm in the face, and it's like, okay, we're back, we're here. And who knows why? Is that because of wartime? And this is another part of the darkness of this thing. Why do they come at times of war? Why do they follow, like the Foo Fighters in World War II? Why do they follow planes? Why do they do this stuff? Why? There was a Russian general a few years ago who came out and mentioned that whenever they have exercises, I mean army, exercises, drills, and fake wars and stuff with each other for practice or whatever. Whenever they do that, they said something like 90% of the time they'll be spotting UFOs directly above them in the sky, watching them. They'll be picking them up on radar. These things are watching and they're observing. So why is that? Because I believe personally that going along with the role of observance that I spoke of before, if they're a creator or if there's something that came along and then saw, oh, these humans are interesting, let's watch them for a few centuries. Who knows, But at the end of the day, they seem to be very, very keen on our technology, and they're keen on what we're doing to each other, i.e. war, that kind of stuff. Why do they come at times like that? Times of negative energy all around the world where people are sad and distressed, and they seem to come in numbers. And while they're here, they're not helping us. They're not landing on the White House lawn and saying, hey, I'm here, and here's an iron bar with energy in it or something, nothing. They're doing nothing. And because, why? They're intelligent. There is a sentience to them, as you know. And the sentience would tell them, if they've been observing us long enough, don't go near these humans and don't say, hey, I'm here, because we're more likely to shoot them. Look at how we treat our neighbors or someone who's different than us or a different race or a different religion. Or we're fractured on this earth. We are, all of us. We're all little splintered off in little groups and everything, and socioeconomic groups, and how much money you earn and everything. And if you're a parent or not, or everything, it's all just, you're fractured into these little groups. And so they would know this. They'd watch this and say, okay, hold on a sec. If we're going to land on the White House lawn, these guys are going to shoot us. And Americans, they probably would. I mean, sorry, Americans, I love you guys, I really do. But you guys have the guns, right? I mean, we've got guns out here in the country, but nothing like you guys. And it's a great thing. It's a great thing because you want to be able to protect your country, like George Washington said. You need to be able to bear arms just in case the government rises up against the people, and that's fair enough.
Yeah. Well, the poor people in Colares couldn't do that because the technology was, first of all, they didn't have anything, I'm guessing, to protect themselves with. And even if they did, the technology appears to have been so far advanced, it was, they couldn't have done anything. But, like you said, there were 2 people who died there, at least 2 that I'm aware of as well. And, there was a deadly confrontation near Cooktown in Queensland too that I wanted to talk about back in 1959. And this case actually comes out of Bill Chalker's book, The Oz Files. And Bill talks about there were 3 men out crocodile hunting by boat in a swamp. And it was by 4:30 a.m. they'd shot 3 or 4 crocs when their attention was attracted by a piercing humming noise, and a huge circular object suddenly came into view, and it hovered at about treetop level, some 100 meters away. And it was about 50 meters across, appeared to be football shaped, and that obviously, it shows up quite a bit actually, that football shape, with a band of a half moon shaped windows, and it was issuing some sort of vapor. And the sighting lasted for some 20 minutes. Anyway, during that time, the men mostly lay hidden in long grass because I guess they were probably up, pretty frightened as well. And one of the men stood up during the sighting, and the UFO eventually moved in a semicircle. It rose slowly and it disappeared at a high speed. And then they had a talk about it, right? But one of the men alleges that they had all manner of severe physical effects as a consequence of this experience, and one of them actually died. So that I don't think that was any sort of nefarious attack on them, but it was an effect, a side effect of perhaps being in close technology, in close proximity to the technology. But I can't say that it wasn't some sort of nefarious attack on them either. Who knows? I don't know. But you know, people do die in relation to the subject.
Absolutely. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head right there. There's been many cases where people have come close to, and also what you mentioned about whether it's on purpose or not coming from them, whether it's a side effect of what their craft or is giving off, some electromagnetic / radiation, unknown radiation, who knows, ionizing. We have no real idea. But like with the Betty and Barney, sorry,
Betty and Barney Hill.
Betty Cash.
Oh, Betty Cash, yes.
Cash Landrum incident. Yeah, that was incredible. I mean, it came down on the road right in front of them, and it was giving off intense amounts of heat. And then, as you know, like, they didn't find out till later on, they suffered until the end of their days in pain and agony without any government help, without anybody saying, okay, this is what actually happened to you. We're sorry about this. There was helicopters involved. There was definitely some sort of government involvement in some way or another, whether it was a top secret craft or whether it was an alien, or as we say, alien to our understanding craft. We don't really know, but there's been many cases like this all throughout history. And I could speak on my own merit when it comes to this, because I've experienced this myself, and I've seen these little things, and I've seen what they can do. I've felt their heat, and I've been burnt by them. And you know, I've had to put my dog down, and it's affected my health. It's affected everything in my life, you know. So I know 100%. So you know, that there's another level to this, and it's not straightforward as aliens coming from Venus and saying, hey guys, we're here, abducting a farmer, probing him every now and then, getting some DNA, and then flying back 10,000 light years to wherever the hell they come from. No, this is a lot stranger than anyone could ever imagine. These things are all around us. They're in our oceans. I'm sure they're in caverns in the earth. I'm sure they're in mountains. There's something going on that humans are unaware of. We have an idea. I mean, we can see them doing certain things, but the evidence is always lacking. At the end of the day, we don't have the hard evidence that people want, and people want that solid craft. They want that hard something that we can take into a laboratory and say, okay, test for this, and we'll test for this, for isotopic ratios and all this kind of stuff. We don't have that. It's all fantasy. It's dream. It's because whatever this is, this story, this whatever we're involved in as humans on this earth, it's greater than us. It's always has been greater than us. It's always been observing us, watching us, letting us do our own thing. But sometimes it seems to come down, and as you say, like some of these things, we don't know whether they're a dream, whether it's a projection, whether they are actually here. But like you say as well, there are cases where there's evidence left on the ground. There's radiation. There's trees that are affected with radiation, ground samples that are affected with radiation. Going back to the 70s, a lot of those cases, more back in those days, we hardly ever get any of those cases nowadays of trace landings or anything like that. Why is that? Is that because back in the 70s, there were beings coming from other planets? And now it was always just a mix of different things. But I believe that there's a core phenomenon at the base of all this.
Yeah. And I you know, one case you mentioned, the 70s, there was a case in 1971 with the former National Party politician Lindsay Hartwig, and he believed a UFO landing may have been connected with his 19-year-old son's death, because his son Graham was found near a circle of dead grass 6 meters in diameter on his family's property at Talabang, which is west of Bundaberg in Queensland.
Wow.
What happened was Graham vanished while helping an employee build fences about 2 kilometres from the homestead. And when he was found, his face had strange markings on it, which the doctor, this is how the story goes, the doctor refused to let his father see, which I find very strange. And the other report was that Graham was actually buried without a death certificate, which I believe is illegal.
Wow.
But there was a neighbour who was chasing a wild pig into the scrub. He also vanished, and his body was also found near the circle. And apparently the police camped on the property for 3 weeks, questioning and probing around the whole incident with no result.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very, very strange. Very, very strange.
Yeah, that is fascinating. See, stuff like that flies in the face of things that we think we know about. So if you were to look up UFOs on the internet, you'll find, okay, sightings here, sightings there. You'll find a few cases and whatnot. You will very rarely hear about the case you just mentioned or the cases we've mentioned about Colaris or anything like that. I'm always having to tell people when they talk about love and light and that they're here to help us and that we can tune in with them. And that's why I'm a little bit worried about C5. When I say that, I mean, a lot of these people, they're going outside. Of course, after a while, they're going to look up and see something if you're outside. Eventually, circumstances and everything will dictate that you will eventually see something. But with a lot of this stuff, who knows what we're calling down? And they believe they're calling or summoning these beings or these craft, right? So who's to say that what you're summoning isn't nasty? If you look at it in the spiritual sense with Ouija boards and stuff like that, right? And seances, a lot of people know not to mess with that kind of stuff, right? Because we don't know what you're inviting in at the end of the day. I've had some weird experiences. One, especially when I was a kid with a Ouija board and a friend of mine, and I will never do that again. It was crazy. Animals went crazy. The birds went crazy. The room went ice cold. A fly that was buzzing around dropped right in the center of the circle dead on a hot summer day. It was just bizarre. It was really crazy. And, and I don't know if I can blame all the weird sightings I've had on that, but that was like when I was 11.
It was the Ouija board's fault.
It was the Ouija board at the end of the day, so I can blame that. But so who's to say that, like with haunted skies that I'm coming out with now, I believe there are connections with certain phenomenon, and especially poltergeist / ghost phenomenon / UFO phenomenon. It seems to be coming from the same place. Whatever that place may be. And scientists are talking about dark matter and stuff like that, right? I believe that these things are coming from dark matter. There's 90% of the universe or 92% of it. We can't see it, but it's there. We can mathematically prophesize that it's there. But, and I mean, there's even an Australian science project at the moment. They've actually purchased an underground mine in Australia, and they're working on dark matter scientists of the highest caliber in this mine working on dark matter, and whatever they're doing down there is some scary stuff. But they know it's real. They know it's real enough to spend $260 million trying to investigate it just in Australia alone. So there's something to it. They seem to be coming from the same place. And there's so many characteristics which link these phenomenon, and the trickster element as well seems to be prevalent in both ghost phenomenon and UFO phenomenon. Balls of light seen in and out of homes, electromagnetic field effects, radiation, even strange smells of sulfur, little bizarre little things like that. The ability to appear and disappear at will. It's some strange stuff.
John Keel, who investigated the Mothman encounters at Point Pleasant in West Virginia, he talked about the cosmic trickster that disturbed and alarmed people. And during 1966-67, around that time, around the whole Mothman thing, there were waves of UFO activity as well. And I'm wondering whether these things can fall through a portal, or it just opens up for some strange reason and these strange appearances become opportunistic, and all types of things go through these portals. I don't really know. But it is interesting how other phenomena occur around, like a collection, I guess, of phenomena occur around certain places. And I actually recently gave a presentation about UFOs and the Yowie connection, and how over in the States, you know, you put the maps of the two over each other, and there are UFO sightings around Yowie reports as well.
Absolutely.
So, you know, what's going on there? Do they, you know, do these? I mean, do the Yowies? You know, do they come out of the UFOs? Are they attracted to them? Did the UFOs come through a portal to change as they're changing dimensions, and somehow the strange cryptids followed them through? I mean, there's just so many questions about the whole thing.
Yeah, there's a thought. I'm glad you brought that up. There's a thought that they are actually alien or extraterrestrial themselves. These big feet or Bigfoot all around the world, right? They've been reported so many years now, going way back in history. And like you said, there's a high strangeness involved in that as well. And a lot of the Bigfoot hunters won't speak about it. They'll just be, no, it's an animal and we'll find it. Eventually we'll find a skeleton or something. No, nothing's ever been found. And I believe there's a reason for that. There's tracks that go up thousands of feet into mountains, you know, in snow, and then all of a sudden disappear. Like they've just been sucked out of the mountain by something up in the air, you know. There's a lot of high strangers. I know of one case, which I looked into a little bit, and it was a bunch of children, I believe in Romania, and they witnessed a UFO come down at the back of their property. They had a large backyard, and then it was a rolling kind of hill going down, and then there was a forest. And they witnessed a UFO come down in the forest just behind their home. And so they're watching it, and then all of a sudden, a bipedal, hairy thing came out of the woods, stopped, noticed that they were all staring at him and yelling at him, and then he just walked back in, and then the thing went up and just disappeared again. So I mean, the sheriff who investigated, or the police officer, the head police officer who investigated, came. He believed that the kids were telling the truth 100%. I mean, as a police officer, you'd have enough experience speaking with people to know when someone is telling you what they believe is the truth. And especially with children, I mean, yeah, kids can lie, adults can lie, anyone can lie, right? But with kids, it's a different thing. It's like with Westall. You know, you could tell the truth in these kids' eyes from what they saw. And also the Ariel school encounter in South Africa as well, where the extraterrestrial landed just behind the school and then came out, and there's another part of the high strangers we're talking about before. Some of the kids saw a certain thing and other kids saw another thing. And this is, I've noticed too, with sky watchers and stuff like that, a certain amount of people will see one thing, and then there's other people will see something completely different. And you're like, what? You looked at it like I did. What's going on there? So some of the kids saw this being come up to them and then disappear and then start again, like some sort of weird projection, which Jacques Valet would speak about. These things may be some sort of projection. There's a high strangeness involved. Who knows whether it's coming from certain humans as well? We don't know about the power of the human mind, really, what we're capable of, whether we're projecting this, whether we're actually forming this in our own minds. But if we are, we're forming something that can form reality. These things, like as we spoke about before, and as you mentioned, they leave a trace. They leave some sort of presence that they were there. Whether that's radiation, electromagnetic field disturbances, that kind of thing. You know, they're forming where you can photograph them and film them. So I mean, if that's a mass hallucination, that's an incredible gift to have, to be able to, you know, make someone else believe that, hey, you're seeing something too, plus your camera's picking it up and my camera's picking it up. So that's an incredible feat. That's something of Uri Geller standards.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I'm just looking, we're just about out of time. So I can't believe we've been speaking for an hour. Can you believe it?
I thought it was 5 minutes.
But I just wanted to sort of wrap this up and get your comments on this too, Damien, because I was reading, Anne Druffel was a well-known UFO researcher. I think she's no longer with us now, but she stated in one presentation that the entities who pose as extraterrestrials are not what they say they are. Rather, they are apparently unwholesome entities who have deceived and interacted with humans since the dawn of history. Be they mythic, real, spiritual, interdimensional, or from the hidden world, which somehow exists in or alongside our own earth plane, I cannot say, since proof still eludes us. I do know for certain, however, that interfering, shape-shifting, otherworldly entities have been described by every major culture and many smaller cultures on the face of the earth down through the millennia, and that these older cultures developed means to fend them off, or at very least, recognize them for what they were. So I think she's just really summed it up in a nutshell, don't you?
I think she's hit the nail on the head there big time. Yeah. And Valet touches on that as well.
Yeah.
Back in the day with a few of his earlier books. And I do believe that these things, they've been tricksters all the way throughout humanity. And just from what I've seen with my experiences with them, with what they do in the sky, and when they appear and times they appear, they're almost childish in some ways, but tricksterish, which is just, they play games. They play silly little games sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. And it just really makes you wonder, what level is this at? These things may have been here since the dawn of humanity, since our early days. And we had no reference for them back then. So we'd call them fairies, or we'd call them this or that. And throughout, trolls, or whatever the case is. And they take on appearances to maybe not scare humans, because we don't really know what they look like. So over the eons, as spirituality and religion has changed on Earth, they've also changed with it to be just one step ahead. And that's where they seem to be. They just always seem to be. And sometimes they seem like time travelers. Sometimes they know certain things that, and I think, how the hell did you know that I was about to do that? Or it's just really, really strange. And that's happened time and time again. And you just think, okay, well, either this is already all written out and it's in some big book somewhere, and some intergalactic book, or they just seem to be hyper aware, and there is no future, past, like time, like we would describe it as humans. Just say that we think time is linear. It's just, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, blah, blah, blah. But if these things are living forever, time wouldn't mean anything to them. Why would they have time? Time is a human thing. So, they could be just here forever, changing as we change, and just being shifty little things.
Buggers.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I think for us to get any answers, real answers to the mystery, we have to ask different questions and be willing to approach the subject, have an eclectic approach, not just look at it as a nuts and bolts UFO research. And I actually think that the mystery is going to be solved in part by looking further afield, that's for sure. So, yeah. So, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for watching. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to like it. And if you really enjoyed it, please remember to share it around with your friends and to your networks as well. And thanks, Damien, for coming onto the show with us.
I loved it. And you know what? I think we're probably going to have a part 2 of this, because there's a lot more to touch on with this. So, an hour is just not quite enough. I think there's a little bit more we can
there is a lot more. Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. Okay. And so stay safe, everyone, until the next episode. And bye for now.